Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to Getting Others to Listen Like You and Say, Tell Me More. We have Chuck Goldstone with us today, and we're very pleased to have him back with us. It's been since pre-COVID that he did a few in-person workshops for us, and we're very pleased that we can welcome him back today. As we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about SCORE in case you're new to SCORE. There's two major important things that SCORE does. One is the training. Training comes in the form of webinars and a few in-person workshops. We don't have, as a district, a large number of offerings this summer, but it doesn't mean that they're any less important. We have some great topics this summer. So I strongly encourage you to watch for the newsletter or to check out the website and find out what's happening in our area. The most important thing that SCORE does, however, is the mentoring. Mentoring is free and confidential. Why is it free? Because our mentors are volunteers and they come to us with a lot of different experiences and knowledge that they want to share with the small business community. We're working with folks at all stages of the process. We're working with those that are trying to decide if small business is right for them. We're working with those that are in that planning phase, and we're working with those that are already open. They're coming to us for a variety of reasons. Help with bookkeeping, help with additional planning, help with strategy. You name the business topic, and we probably have a mentor that can help you with it. And if we don't in our chapter or district level, we can certainly reach out to the national database. A lot of folks ask me what that first session is like. You do not need to have a business license to come talk to a mentor already. A first session is a get to know you. They want to know what your goals are, what your challenges are, and help you put together a plan to achieve that goal, to overcome those challenges. So I strongly encourage you. They also work as groups if they need to be. So I strongly encourage you to reach out to get a SCORE mentor. So that brings us to the next point. How do I do that? Super, super easy. No excuse. SCORE.org and enter your zip code in the little box, and it will zip you along to your chapter that's nearest you to connect with a SCORE mentor. You can also go directly to the chapter websites in our district, and I can put those in chat after my intro. And while you're on the website, strongly encourage you to check out the library. There's blogs, there's templates you can download. You can also find on several of these chapter websites the recordings for past webinars. So just a lot of information to take advantage of. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this down, and I want to welcome Chuck Goldstone to us and hand it over to you, Chuck. It's all yours.
Excellent. Let me do the screen share. And there we are. It's always a pleasure doing a program with SCORE. I've done a number of them through the years. I've been really delighted to meet some people afterwards, so we'll spend about an hour together, and I'm hoping that I can provide some things that are going to get you thinking about how you tell the world what it is that you do. You may have this great business idea. You might be a startup. You might be looking for a job. You might be working on some kind of project, but you have this concept, you have this idea, and coming up with it may very well be the second most important thing you'll ever do to become successful. And the first and most important to become successful is convincing others. No matter what we do, we need the support and guidance and opportunity that is provided by those who we interact with. We do few things totally by ourselves, whether we're looking for clients or funding or customers or a new job or trying to get enrolled in some kind of a program. We've got to show our value to the people who we are coming in contact with. Let's take businesses for example. They will fail for one of three reasons. One is because the idea for the business was not very good. It was not, there was not market validation. There really isn't a real need. On the other hand, it could fail because it's a really great idea, but it's poorly executed. Either the team wasn't right, or resources weren't available, or big mistakes were being made. But strangely enough, the reason far too many companies falter or out and out fail is because the idea was good, the execution was fine, but they couldn't convince anyone. The story wasn't there. They could not connect to the people who they were trying to reach. So I've seen great ideas and great technologies that falter because the story wasn't right. So in the next hour, let's talk about this concept of story, its power, and how we can migrate from the way we are trying to communicate with people right now, if it isn't very effective, and really enhance that and give you the power of communication. So whether you're looking for a job, or you have an idea, a company, a startup, you know, you're doing it because you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and all you need to do is just give the world just a little vision of it, and they will come pounding on your door to, you know, to support you or to buy what you do. And you're doing it because you are really committed to it, and you think that you've got the best idea. But the problem is, there are a lot of people out there who feel exactly the same way. So you are competing for the ear and the wallet of stakeholders out there. So the question at that point is, how can you be heard above the noise? How can you be the one who is remembered? And it goes really far beyond the pitch. You know, we use the word pitch quite a bit. Those of you who are in the entrepreneurial space probably know the term well. We create PowerPoint decks, we create messages, we're pitching. We're looking for people to support us. But far too often, people wait until the end of the development of their idea to figure out what their pitch is, right before they need their money, or just before they need customers. But I want to go beyond pitch. It is about story. It is about who you are and why it's important to the people who you want to reach. It's making that connection. So we're really going to extend beyond that. So let me tell you what I think the goals for today ought to be. The first thing is, I want to change the way you look at yourself, your message, and the audience. It's changing insights. I want to provide you with a handful of practices. I'm going to give you 12, 13 of them today. This is from a pretty extensive list of over 100 that I have, you know, in my book and in the programs that I do. But I wanted to give you, you know, sort of 12 most important, the ones that if you adopt even some of these, I will promise you that your ability to interact and move people to action will improve dramatically. And the third thing, I want to give you the incentive to actually put some of these to practice. Unless I can convince you that this is in your best interest, that you're going to succeed with these, then it's all for naught. Ultimately, we want to get people to listen to us. We want people to like us. And I don't mean they're going to invite you over for Thanksgiving dinner, although that would be nice. But liking you means, do you have credibility? Do they feel comfortable with you? Do they like your idea? Do they simply feel good about you and your message? But the most important thing is we want to get people to do something. That's the reason we present. It is not about hurling information and bullets and content and facts. It is about aligning somebody to your interests. Now, you may need to support it with these this information, but the important thing is that you want them to do something, you want them to identify and see it's in your best interest. If we were in person, I would say, all right, what is the most frequently asked question? You walk into a room. We're now doing that again. You meet somebody, and after an exchange of names, what's normally that first question that you ask a stranger in a setting like that? Think about that. And I would bet most of you are thinking, this is the question. That's the one we hear all the time. I say to people, hi, what is it that you do? And far too often, people explain how they do what they do, or their technology, or something that sort of loses me. So very often, at the end of that 30-second or 1 minute of what do you do, I say, that's very interesting. I only have one follow-up question. What do you do? We tend not to be able to answer that question well. And in the next few moments, I'm going to share with you what I think the best approach to answering that, to be able to engage people, to be remembered, to get people to say, hey, that's interesting. Now tell me more. I want to start with a couple of basic truths. Truth number one is you're not who you think you are. And matter of fact, you're not even who you are. You are who they think you are. What is it in their head that they've imagined you to be? They don't see everything you do, your experience, your technology, the traction you have. What they see is their impression. They see the story behind all of this, and that's what we're going to try to concentrate on today. Now, the story that they have in their head will either be the one you deliver or the one that they surmise, the one that they pick up things here or there, may or may not be accurate, but whatever that is your story. That's who you are in their minds. So you are only as good as your story. I'm going to go one step further. You are only your story, especially when you first meet somebody. It's not your audience's responsibility to understand. It's yours to be understood. You need to be the one who controls that image. Keep in mind, your audience doesn't owe you a thing, not even their attention. You need to earn it every moment. You need to engage them. You need to make what you're saying relevant and interesting to them. My first career was in radio. Quite a long time ago. I've stayed involved in radio. It's my favorite medium. But I learned the most important lesson about communication from being on the air. And that is, I was only a button push away from somebody tuning out. If I said something they didn't like, if they were doing something that was more interesting than what I was talking about, button is pushed, tune out. But what I learned was you don't have to be on radio to be tuned out. You can be sitting right across from somebody in your audience, and they may tune you out, and you may not even know it. So attention precedes pretty much everything, and we need to keep our audiences engaged. There's a very fatal mistake that many startups make, and a lot of people who are just doing something in business and they want to succeed. And that is, they think about doing this story later on. Let me develop my technology. Let me do the coding. Let me set up my business plan. But your story needs to start from day one. It needs to be not toward the end, not after you've developed everything, but it needs to occur at the inception of the idea. That's when you need to start. And you need to do it for a number of reasons. One is you need validation. You need to know that you're actually doing something that the world wants. And you cannot get accurate market validation, customer validation, personal validation, unless somebody clearly understands who you are. If they think you're something else, then your data is going to be wrong. You'll find something else by articulating your story. And this happens to all of us. And that is sometimes in a conversation with someone, as you're explaining what it is you do, you will hear yourself saying something at exactly the same time that your audience hears. There are things that just come out. There are insights that we get just by articulating. Your story is at the core of everything you do. Your marketing plan, your website, your hallway chat, your interviews, whatever it is, your story underpins everything. And you need to be ready and poised to do it, not when your MVP or your minimum viable product is done, or not toward the end. You need to do it at the beginning. And the reason is, if you start at the end, you've wasted valuable time where you should already be out there telling your story. And worse than that is, and worse than the delay, is that you have missed all the opportunity for trial and error and improvement. So you are practicing in front of your important audiences. So you need to deal with your story from day one. And it is such a simple concept. We're just really trying to get an idea from inside our head into somebody else's head so that they see it in the same way. You probably are around a lot of people who are telling their story or pitching or doing presentations. And for the most part, most of the way we present these days is not very good. There are a lot of mistakes. We're taught to be subject matter experts. We're not really taught how to be good storytellers, not to be good communicators. And that's my world. That's what I want to help people do, is learn to connect with people and have your story be important to them. If we were in person, I would open this up for a discussion and say, all right, what is it that makes most presentations not very good? And we would compile a list, and a lot of people would say, well, people are telling me too much, or they use slides and they're too complicated, or they're not engaging me. It's not about me. So we would have this whole list of reasons why so many presentations these days don't succeed. But I'll give you a summary. The reason so many of them don't is we are so far too close to our subject matter. We see what we do differently than our audience should see it. So we're too close. We sometimes tell people the wrong things. We sometimes tell them way too much, or we're way too technical, or give them things that are interesting to us, but not terribly relevant to them, and too much about us. Yeah, we can be the subject matter expert. We can be the hero. We can be the core. But the story needs to be about the people who we are reaching. We need to align them, their interests and ours. The good news for us is so many terrible presentations, or just so-so presentations, and just fair presentations are out there, so that if you master some of these skills of story construction and story delivery in just really effective communication, you are going to be the one who is remembered. You're going to be that one that stands out. You know, a moment ago, I answered this question for us, and it's one that I pose in programs, and that is the purpose of a presentation to change what people know? Is it the information? And the answer is it's false. We present to change what people do. It's about moving people to some kind of action. What they know, what they need to know, need to support what it is that they need to do. And it's always a verb. Find that verb. Every time we present, there's a verb involved in it. Do you want buy this, hire me, support me, whatever. There's always an action that we want people to follow. And keep in mind that every presentation will convey two things. One, it will convey information. That's the factual stuff. But it will also convey what is even more important, and that is the image. We are not memorable because we get people to know what we know. It is getting people to have a feeling about us. That's at the core of it. So you need to make sure that you reflect both information and that image that you want to project. Every presentation, and I discovered this quite a while ago, every presentation needs to do 5 things. It needs to start by capturing attention. It needs to engage. It needs to be relevant to your audience. It needs to be clear and simple. We overtell our stories. We tell people things that are really not necessary or should be told later. We need to be memorable. There are so many messages out there. Your job is to make sure that your presentation, your information, the feeling that you want to project moves from attention and short-term memory into long-term memory. And finally, it needs to drive action. We present to change what people do. So there's some science behind this that I find really interesting, and that is that we do not make decisions in the cognitive part of our brain. The part of our brain that actually says yes or no is the emotional region of our brain, and there's a lot of science that backs this up. So our job is how do we reach people emotionally, since all decisions are based on emotion. And I get folks to say, well, there are the people who only want to see the facts. Yeah, that is not the way people make decisions. They may require facts, but ultimately their gut has to say, yes, I believe in this. Yes, this is correct. Decisions are made in the emotional part of our brain. So what does that mean? That means to change what people do, you must change the way they think or feel. Either change or reinforce. If they're not doing what you want them to do, you have to change it so that they do what you want them to do. If they're already doing what you want, you need them to feel that it is the correct thing, and you want to propel them to continue to do that. And the best way to do this is through this thing called story. And I don't mean story as, once upon a time, 3 entrepreneurs walked into a bar. Yeah, it can be that kind of story, but I want to define story in a different way. To me, story is your narrative, your content, plus whatever kind of an emotional link it is to your audience, what gets them to listen, how they can say, well, what's in it for me? How do you make that connection? So it is your content, your narrative, plus any kind of a connection that you can make so that they, we know what stories do. What do stories do? They make us lean forward. We know a story when we hear it. And a story can be, like I say, it does not have to be a once upon a time narrative. It can be a provocative statement. It can be a really interesting, compelling statistic. It can be just that connection you make between what it is that you are talking about and what is important to them. So your job now is to get factual information to enter through that affective portal, because stories will transport us. So it can be the narrative tale. It can be just a really compelling example. It can be a hypothetical. It can be a case study, an analogy, whatever it happens to be. If you can get them to think that there is a connection between your content and what is important to them. And we remember stories. Data drops off, and the studies will show that within hours, people will forget most of what you say. But they will remember stories. And there's a great example of this. Years ago, I attended a Disney management workshop. They were doing this is quite a long time ago, and it was sharing Disney management principles. Lots of slides and overheads of bullets, detailed stuff, and I don't remember a single one. But they started every major concept with a story. And I remember the stories. And as a result of remembering the stories, I remember the content, the management principle behind it. So stories can be really quite powerful. So let's go back for a moment and answer that really important question. What do you do? You're going to get this all the time. People don't want to know, what do you do? Well, I have a technology and these parts go together. And people aren't interested in what they really want to know is this. Number one, why do you deserve to be in the cosmos? What is the problem you're solving or the pain you're eradicating or the opportunity that you're bringing? Because that has relevance to me. Can you cure my pain? Can you give me an opportunity that I didn't have? Are you doing something no one's done before? Or maybe you're doing something that someone's done before, but you can do it better. And I used to think it stopped there, but it doesn't. There's a third, and that is others might be better than you or may have done it first, but you have the better story. And I could give you example after example of the things that are actually not as good as the original, but they're the market leaders. Those of you who have a closet full of old video cassettes, the majority of you have VHS and not Beta. Beta was a much superior technology, but it didn't have the right business plan and it didn't have the right story. So that's why the video cassettes that we're no longer using are primarily VHS. So you've answered that first part of the question, why do you deserve to be in the cosmos? But it's not relevant until you can get people to understand why they should care. Needs to be connecting to them, needs to be part of their story. So the what's in it for me. And frequently people stop there. And if you stop there, you'll do better than just telling people how you do it or confusing them with your explanation. But there is a third to really make it powerful. And that is, now that you understand what I do and why it's important to you, what do we do next? What's the ask? You try to get funding, you're trying to get hired, you're trying to get support, whatever it is. Bring people to that. Let people know. Don't let them just, don't leave it to them to try to figure out. Try to lead them to, by either directly saying it or being so suggesting that there is no conclusion, but to proceed to that next step. In the time we have, I want to share with you a handful of best practices. And then if there's some time, we can open it up to some questions at the end. This comes from the big list, but I wanted to give you ones that I thought in an hour would be most game-changing and relevant. I want to start by saying I don't provide rules in general. There are a few things that I would really insist on, but in general, I don't want to present you with present rules to you. I want to present you with guidelines. Rules only apply to things that we can already anticipate. But most of you are going to be in situations where maybe you've not faced this situation before. And there might not be a rule that you can apply. But if I give you guidelines, you will be able to make judgments to be able to make the best decision. So, guideline number one, know who your audience is. Who do you want to reach? And know why that's important to you and to them. Before you start with your outline and content, you really have to think about your intent. What is it that you want your audience to do? And who are those stakeholders? Who are those audiences? They might be investors. It could be your market or your customer. It could be your ecosystem, your employees. It could be vendors. It could be an employer. If you're looking for work, if you're trying to get into a program, it could be the person who is making that judgment. It could be teachers, and it could be any variety. But keep in mind, all of these people have perhaps different interests. So one size presentation doesn't fit everyone. So you have to think from the perspective of who these folks are and why should they be listening to you? What's going to be important to them? So you've got to balance that's what's in it for them and what's in it for you. That is what makes the foundation of a very effective communication. Rule number 2, or a guideline number 2, is find the do, find the verb. It again is your intent. What do you want them? What do you want them to do? Find that verb. Because our job is not to convey information. Remember, our job is to move them to some kind of decision that will, we hope, be in both their best interest and ours as well. Number 3, start with a problem, not the solution. Nobody will care what your solution is if they aren't aware of what the need is, why you need to exist. Don't start with the solution. Let people really feel the problem. In my workshops, I tell people, find the need, find the pain point, find the opportunity point, and then whack it with a stick. If it's a pain point, just whack it with a stick until they can, until the pain is just really feelable and maybe even unbearable. And then you can say, I can make that pain go away. Or I can provide you with an opportunity that you never had before. So find that solution. Don't start, we have a technology that does this, and explain how to do it, because you're just going to get, so what? Comes down to, why do you deserve to be in the cosmos? Are you satisfying a need? Are you eradicating and solving a problem? Are you curing a pain? Are you eliminating a fear? All these bad things that you can make better. Or is it a good thing you can make even better than that? Is it an enhanced opportunity? Can you give them something that makes them even better than what they're experiencing now? Now, keep in mind, it's harder to sell opportunity than it is pain. If you're bleeding, you know it, and we can make the bleeding stop. If you're already doing it, if someone's already doing it okay, they might not want to invest the effort in, even though it's going to actually make them better. Sometimes change in that respect is a little more difficult. So either you want to relieve pain going from a minus to a plus, or you want to enhance an opportunity going from a plus to an even greater plus. So you need either to change the intensity or the polarity. Every presentation really ought to be able to do that. Number 4, it's not about how you do it, but why you do it. If you have a technology, for instance, if you're a startup, let's continue to use that as an example, how you do it may be interesting to somebody later on, but you don't want to start with a how you do it. You want to start why you do it. Why do you deserve to be in that cosmos? What is that problem you're solving? So try to avoid being too technical and too detailed at first. And again, it's why do you deserve to be in the cosmos? The order is this: it's why first, what second, and how third, and really don't mess around with that order. In almost every case, that's the important order in terms of the construction of your story. And make it their story. You can be the subject matter. You can be the hero, but you have to make it relevant to them. So you've got to think from their perspective. You don't want to tell your story from the inside out. You want to tell it so that they see you and see why what it is that you're doing is relevant to them. And you've got to give them the right lens to be able to see you. And different audiences, you may have to provide different lenses to, because their needs are going to be different. So it can't just be about you. It really needs to be about them. You need to find that hot button. And again, we don't want to tell our story from the inside out. We want to tell it from the perspective of who our audience is. That means you have to understand what's important to your audience. You've got to think like they do. So you give them the correct lens to be able to see you, that little yellow dot in there, and each of them may see you from a different vantage point. So to be a savvy presenter and storyteller, you've got to be able to put yourself in their shoes to be able to see you from their perspective. You need to start with the big picture first. Some of you have an idea. It came to you when you're driving, whatever. And this idea can normally be summed up in a sentence or two. It's very simple. It came to you as an insight. And as you think more and more, you think about all the things you can add, the enhancements, the details, where the technology can go, specification, all this other stuff that builds so you can build your product, your idea, your technology, your business plan. And people say, hey, what do you do? And too often we tell them that. We don't give them the big picture first. So all they're seeing is detail. Now there's potentially a big problem here. And that is they may take one of those things you do, elevate it, see it out of context, and actually believe you're doing something that might be quite a bit different from what you're really doing. So start with that big concept, start with the idea. And once they get that, then you can begin to layer on in subsequent conversations, or even later in the same conversation. You may want to layer these things on. Number 7, show what you're like, but then you got to show them why you're different. And this is a bit of a revelation that I had some years ago, and that is about how we engage and make decisions. So you may want to start out by making sure people know that you're in, healthcare, or you've got an insurance product, or that you have code software. So they need to know you do that, and you don't manufacture dog wallets, which, by the way, would be a good idea if dogs had money, but I digress. Nonetheless, you want to start with that big category first, but as soon as they know what it is that you are in that big category, you need to separate yourself from that and show why you're different. What's interesting about that is we engage based on how similar something is to our own experience. We make decisions based on differences. And the example I use is I had to buy a refrigerator. Well, what do all refrigerators do? They presumably keep food cold. I didn't buy a refrigerator because it was like all the others. I bought it because it had some features that provided a benefit for me, things that I like. So I made my final decision based on differences. People, you need to find what makes you different, because that difference will make you memorable. And that difference, if you can align that to their interests, means that you are on your way to a decent track to getting people to say, now tell me more. Get rid of jargon. Make sure that you don't lose people. I've been in so many presentations that people assume that I know the acronym or some technical word. And if I'm lost by the third sentence, then I'm lost for the entire presentation. So keep it basic. If you have to use jargon, if you have to use technical language, define it early on. Make sure that people really understand so that they don't get lost in that jumble. So just keep in mind some things that are really common to you might not be to your audience. Most egregious mistake most people make is telling people too much, more than they need, more than they want. There's a wonderful thing called cognitive load theory, which talks about how much we can absorb, how we absorb it. What is that load when we're actually trying to intake information? And you've got to keep cognitive loads so it's manageable. And the theory is, in any learning chunk, we can remember somewhere between 5 and 9 things. So keep that in mind that you don't want to give people 40 things. You can eventually get to 40 if you do it in these little packets that they will remember of 5 to 9 things. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have 6 things you want people to remember. If you tell them correctly about those 6 things, there's a very good chance they're going to remember most, if not all. But what do we tend to do? We tend to make it interesting for us being presenters and tell people all these sometimes irrelevant, nice to know things. And if they can't differentiate between what is the absolute important and the less than important, they're going to forget all but 6. And there's a very good chance that 3 of those things that were really important to you will be lost. So let's assume for a moment that you've engaged your audience. They're excited about it. You've got their interests. If you have not told them enough, they're going to ask a question. But if you do what too many people do and just slather way too much information, the response from your audience might be markedly different. Number 10, seeing is believing. So we learn in different ways, but a very powerful way is to reinforce through visuals. We're doing that these days with PowerPoint. And I will tell you that most people are using PowerPoint incorrectly. They're projecting complex documents. They have slides that don't reinforce, but compete. Visual support is incredibly effective. If I tell you something, you may only remember after 4 days about 10% of it. That's what the science says. Visually, and once again, this is in the aggregate. Everyone's learning style is a little bit different, but visual is a little more magnetic. But if you pair them together effectively, you will increase retention significantly. And we can use a variety of things to reinforce visually. But far too many people make this mistake. This is what their slides look like. They're projected documents. Now, this would be fine if I gave you something for you to hold and read on your own. But if this is as a backdrop for me presenting to you, it doesn't support, it actually competes. And you force your audience to decide whether to listen to you or read what's on the slide. Visuals are often too dense, too complex, too much text, too technical, and often really quite distracting. And that's why PowerPoint and Keynote really are ineffective in a lot of ways, because they encourage you to make your slides and your handouts the same thing. They're different. Slides support, they're live. Your materials that you send out or leave as a summary, they can be complex because they have to tell the story on their own. But don't mix these 2 things up. When you're doing a visual with words, think about what you would do if you had a yellow underline or highlighter and were underscoring something in a book. Those are the words you put up on the screen, not complete sentences. And sometimes there's just power in a visual, way more powerful than a word. You walk into a museum and you see this and you're going to say, hey, I want to come back and see that again. It's really quite evocative. But a picture, if you will, the same frame, but instead of the portrait, you have a text description. Chances are you will not be visiting that painting or museum again. So don't let these things compete. Number 11, monitor your audience. Now, when we're in person, it's easier to do. Watch eye contact. You look for body language. You can read your audience. It is much more difficult in a virtual call. And for me, very difficult right now because I don't see any of you. So it's a little harder to monitor. But when you have an opportunity to monitor your audience, do that. You'll learn a lot, even about how you're communicating. Pepsi-Cola was one of my clients for many years. We did the majority of their international training programs, and we were doing one on Pepsi sales. And certainly, I dealt with the senior execs who controlled, the content. But I needed to see and hear firsthand from frontliners. So I flew down to Florida and spent the day on a truck with the guy who's a really great salesperson. Never went to sales training school. He just knew how to sell. And he said something that I will never forget. He said, if you listen hard enough, your customer will always tell you how to sell them. So it is really about attention. You've got to really pay attention to your audience. Because it does two things. It monitors them, but you also get this very important feedback. Number 12, share your passion. Be enthusiastic. Love what you do. Have so much confidence in the way you're presenting that you don't come across as stilted. Don't memorize. Don't read to your audience. Know your content well enough and be confident enough that what you do is you're just talking to them. And it doesn't matter if you have pauses or even a stammer now and then. That's real. That's connective. But show your enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is immensely contagious. And remember, in every case, no matter whether you are a startup getting funding, or you're looking for a job, or you're looking for an opportunity, or looking for support, they're buying you, not your company, not your idea. They need to have confidence in you. Investors say this all the time, and that is, we don't invest in the horse, we invest in the jockey. You will find a really impressive leader can have a crappy idea and still get support and funding, but the reverse doesn't work. A great idea without somebody behind them who they feel comfortable with, who they feel is credible, who they like, just doesn't work. So when it comes to information and you're it. It's got to be your credibility and the confidence that you exude, and I mean, they have to see all of these things. And again, an okay idea, impressive leader, much better than the reverse. Let me leave you with some parting thoughts, and then we'll open up for a couple of questions. Parting thought number 1. If they don't get it, it's your issue, not theirs. You've not explained yourself. And sometimes you will never know unless you're really good at monitoring and reading your audience. No matter what you do, somebody's going to say to do it differently. You have to trust your own instincts. In the beginning, you're going to get a lot of feedback that's going to be very valid, and you'll be making many more changes. But after a while, you have to take feedback in the aggregate. Are you hearing this quite a bit? Make that change. But if you change after every presentation, you might find that the thing that the person you just presented to, that you make that change next time for somebody else, and they may come back and say, gee, why did you do that? So understand that you're going to get lots of feedback. Some of it's going to be spot on, but you have to trust your own instincts about what to use and not. And finally, you've got to invest in yourself. Spend the time, spend opportunities, invest in opportunities to find trusted mentors. There are a lot of resources that are free. I'm going to tell you about one in a moment. There are some that you have to be prepared to pay for. You need to invest in yourself, because you're your most valuable asset. The free thing that I do, I'm certainly happy to invite anyone. I run a weekly entrepreneurial roundtable. It's online. We get anywhere from 15 to 30 people show up each week. Some people come once in a while. Some people come quite a bit. but we have created so many connections and collaborations. We've lost count, but it's somewhere in the last 3 years between 10 and 12,000 connections and collaborations, referrals and job leads and opportunities and partnerships and just meetings. So whether it's here and something like this, network as best you can, because you'll find so many opportunities for peer connection. So keep in mind, your presentation needs to do 5 things. It needs to capture attention. It needs to engage and be relevant. It's got to be simple and clear. Don't overtell your story. It's got to be memorable. You've got to go from short-term to long-term memory. You need to be the one who is remembered, and it needs to drive action. So find that verb every time you go in. So you can have a great idea, great strategy, great technology, great experience, but you need to be just as good talking about it. So some of you are going to fail. Your business is not going to succeed. You're not going to get that job. You're not going to get a promotion. A number of things are going to happen to some of you, but I hope that if that does happen, it is because your idea or execution sucked, and not because you had a great idea or great experience. You just couldn't convince anyone. That, to me, would be the real tragedy. Ultimately, I want you to get people to listen. I want them to get them to like you. And if you're very skilled and maybe a little lucky, you'll get them to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. So what I want you to do is to think about the things we've talked about today. Think about the things that resonate the most and try them out. Give yourself permission to be creative. Give yourself permission to do things maybe a little bit differently. So I'll leave you with, we talked about the Disney thing early on, the Disney workshop, and they told one story, and I want to leave you with this. This is from the film Roger Rabbit many years ago. I think it was 1988, and it was a beautifully skillful movie that mixed live action with cartoon figures. And this is long before CGI was perfected. So all of the animation was hand-drawn cell animation. But they had one scene where Bob Hoskins, who plays a detective, is handcuffed to the rabbit. And he needs to, with a hacksaw, extricate himself from the handcuffs. And if you'll see up in the right corner, there's a lamp. They thought it would be cool. What if they bump the lamp and it sways back and forth? It's going to do something very interesting. That'll be light on them, and then shadow, and then light, and then shadow. But at that point, it was very difficult because, I mean, certainly the film reflected that, because there's a live action, there's Hoskins, and that's what the light's doing to him. But they had to replicate that frame by frame on the hand-drawn animation. Very difficult, very time-consuming, but it went over extremely well with audiences. Disney now, the Disney lore, there's the concept of bumping the lamp. And that is doing something that is actually hard or far beyond what it is that you might have expected. Because sometimes the consequences are just so rewarding. So what I want to invite you to do is, when you are putting together your own story, not only work hard and do a good job, but bump your own lamp, and, you know, put the effort in that will make you memorable. So I will tell you, it is absolutely worth the effort. We have a few minutes left, so if there is a way to field questions, maybe how do you do that? Through chat, Teresa?
Well, I already have some questions submitted, so I would be happy to read those out to you if you could answer them.
I would
for
be
us?
delighted. I would be delighted. By the way, here's, if you have any questions that we don't answer, feel free to email. So anyway, fire away.
Okay, I am the owner of Falmouth Solar. Is it a good idea to give a presentation with more than one option? I don't want to cause indecision.
It is really quite hysterical that you're into solar. I've been exploring solar myself, and I have seen some decent presentations and some absolutely horrible presentations. Answering that question, I don't think there's any specific answer for that. I do think providing people with options is strategically not necessarily a bad move. Because if you only present one option, it's either a yes or a no. If you provide people with a variety of options, then I think you may have a better shot. You increase the odds. Earlier in the presentation, I showed you the big triangle with the 97 people in it, and then that one dot, which is you on the other side. Something interesting happens if you can differentiate that little dot by itself. If you're in the big triangle with everybody else, your chances of being chosen are 1 in 97. If you are that dot by yourself, what you have done is you have increased the odds to what? To 1 in 2. It's either you or somebody else under that big triangle. So again, answering this in a way, you differentiate, listen to your audience, and your audience will sometimes you can get a read of whether or not you have that great option and you only really need to provide one, or and you sometimes know that by really listening to your audience, or or you do have the option of providing more than one, but you'll get a feel. You're gonna have to trust your instincts on that.
And I think early on in your presentation, you briefly mentioned a book. Can you tell us the title of the book?
Oh, the book is called, it'll be out in just a couple of weeks. If anybody wants to email me, I can send you the actual release date. It's called Strategies and Stories, Getting Others to Listen Like You and Say, Tell Me More. And it's an indispensable guide for entrepreneurs and innovators to pitch and to move others to action. I'm very excited about it. It also comes with a downloaded workbook that has essentially 30 worksheets that you're developing your stakeholder list, your story, your content in real time as you're going through the book. I'm really excited about it. I've been teaching this model now for a very long time, and it's been a real game changer. So anyone who's interested, certainly take down the email address, email me, and as soon as it's available, I can let you know.
Okay. Is it okay to put pricing in the presentation if the price is actually minimal to their overall spending for the specific service?
Once again, that becomes a judgment call, and something that there are people who people who are, for instance, sales coaches. They're great to tap. If you're selling based on price, probably. If price is not relevant, I personally think it's much better to sell them on the idea first, get them excited about it, and then price becomes less of an issue. But if you start out on price, that's the backdrop. They're going to be deciding even long before they have a great idea of what the connection is. They may be making the decision for the wrong reason. If you do something in terms of price, and you do it in your presentation, put it toward the end, unless you are selling based on price, in which point you can probably bring it forward.
All right. If if I sell women's bags and home decor, how can I tell my story to attract my target audience? I'm a minority that wants to sell eco-friendly products.
Well, find the benefits, find the thing that's going to resonate with people, find out what their needs or interests are. If you're going to deal with people who primarily want to buy sustainable products, you know, that could be a pretty important part of your presentation. If you're selling based on you know, on style and elegance, that's what you want. You want to promote. Find out the thing that is really important. Let me throw something in that's sort of you know, collateral to this, and that is early on when you're figuring out who your audience is. Think about what the obstacles would be. Why might they say maybe or no? And frequently, you want to know for two reasons. Number one, it might be valid, and you might have to rethink what it is that you're doing. But more often than not, if somebody has that kind of immediate obstacle pushback bias, more often than not, it's because they are not terribly, they've been misinformed, or they have the wrong idea about something, or it might have been something that was relevant in the past, but no longer is. So you want to find that out. And the reason you do is because if you've got this pushback, if your audience has a pushback in their head, everything that you say is going to have to penetrate through that filter. If you know what it is, then you diffuse it early on by saying things like, you know, we used to think that, and then you just, you know, destroy the myth. Once you do that, then there is no filter to go through. By the same token, if you find something that somebody you know absolutely loves, that's the filter it's going to go through. So that's you can leverage that. So, you know the hot buttons, know what's interesting to them, but also know what the obstacles are, because in that case, you're going to want to diffuse them.
This will be our last question. Do you have any tips for people who English isn't their native language?
Oh, yes. We could do an entire program on that. I deal with, as I say, I deal with the entrepreneur, the startup community, and a very, very large percentage of them, of companies are with people who aren't from the US. I work with probably a dozen accelerator programs across the globe. Spain and Portugal and Scandinavia and Japan and Korea. Language in pitching can certainly be somewhat of an issue. It's not your fault. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an accent. The problem is the ear, the American ear, the non-native ear is going to have a little more difficulty interpreting that. So let me leave you with a couple of quick tips. It actually would be a much longer discussion, but this is where there's great value in having visuals, because if there are certain keywords that might be more difficult for people to understand, you make sure they're up on the screen. Very frequently, I will miss a word because it's pronounced in a way that my ear did not hear correctly. So take advantage of your slides and make sure that that word is up, but also in terms of delivery, deliver a little bit more, a little slower. Let's take Spanish for example. Spanish is interesting in that there are more words in a sentence than would be in a similar sentence in English. Consequently, people from who speak Spanish do speak a little faster than people who are speaking English. So slow it down, make sure you're projecting, make sure you articulate, be aware of some of the words that might be, you know, some of the letters that might be pronounced differently. Focus on those, practice, record yourself and listen. So there are a lot of things that you can do. There really are, if you want, if it's a very profound accent, you know, there are tapes and programs to reduce the accent. I don't necessarily suggest that people find that do that. So, sometimes it may be of value, but let me be blunt about one thing. Sometimes you might, if an accent is very, very heavy, unless they specifically want to hear from you, maybe if you're pitching an idea, a product or a company, somebody else might be a better spokesperson. You should be there as the subject matter expert to be able to field questions, but at least be open to the fact that you have one chance to make a really great impression. And if you're not the right person, and your idea is, you must sell this idea, make the hard decision sometimes and have somebody help you or be the spokesperson. I'll give you one example. I'm dealing with a client, a person I've been dealing with for many, many years, who has a product specifically sold to women. And it was a healthcare product. He often, in some cases, it's just fine. In other cases, he should not be the presenter. It needs to be a woman. It needs to be somebody who the audience can identify with. So, once again, when you're standing in front of a group, you are the vessel through which that message comes. So, once again, invest in yourself. Once again, practice. Once again, keep the idea in your head that you are the focus.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. That was fantastic. Thank everyone for joining us today. And we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.